In just 4 years, one invisible killer erased a third of Europe from existence. Picture this. You wake up in 1347 Florence. Your neighbor's house was full of laughter yesterday. Today, silent. The family of 6 who lived there. Gone. Not moved away. Dead. All of them. In 3 days. And you. You've just felt the first tender swelling in your armpit. The Black Death didn't just kill people, it killed entire civilizations, reshaping the very soul of Europe in ways we're still discovering today. But here's what they don't teach you in school. This wasn't just Europe's darkest hour. It was the birth of the modern world. The plague that destroyed everything also created everything we know today. Stay with me, because the real story of the Black Death will shatter everything you thought you knew about medieval history. The Merchant's Curse. I want you to imagine the most successful trade route in human history. The Silk Road, a golden highway connecting east and west, carrying silk, spices, and treasures across continents. But in 1346, it carried something else. Something that would make kings tremble and empires fall. The Yersinia pestis, a bacterium so small you'd need a microscope to see it, yet so deadly it would rewrite the map of Europe forever. Our story begins not with death, but with war. The Siege of Kaffa, a Genoese trading post on the Crimean Peninsula. Mongol forces had been attacking this Christian stronghold for months, when suddenly their own soldiers began dying. Not from swords or arrows, but from an invisible enemy. Here's where history gets cinematic. The Mongol commander, in an act of biological warfare that would make modern generals shudder, ordered the corpses of plague victims catapulted over Kaffa's walls. Picture it, rotting bodies sailing through the air, landing with sickening thuds inside the city. The world's first recorded act of bioterrorism. The Genoese traders fled in their ships, carrying with them silks, gold, and something far more precious, their lives. Also, they thought. They had no idea they were also carrying the fleas that would doom Europe. The perfect storm. What made the Black Death so devastatingly effective? It wasn't just the bacteria. It was the perfect storm of medieval life. Imagine 14th century Europe. Overcrowded cities where human waste flowed in open gutters, where rats scurried freely between houses, where the same flea could bite a dying rat and then leap onto a human host. The unsanitary conditions weren't just unpleasant, they were death traps. But here's the terrifying genius of Yersinia pestis. It didn't just kill its victims, it turned them into weapons. The bubonic form attacked the lymph nodes, creating grotesque swellings called buboes black, oozing masses the size of apples that would burst with infected pus. Victims would die within days, their bodies covered in these horrific marks. But if the bacteria reached the lungs, pneumonic plague. This from spread through coughing, sneezing, even talking. One infected person in a crowded medieval marketplace could doom dozens with a single breath. A pneumonic plague, 100% fatal if untreated. The septicemic form was perhaps the cruelest. It infected the blood directly, turning victims black before they even knew they were sick, hence the name, the Black Death. Speed of annihilation. The speed of this pandemic defies belief. From Constantinople in May 1347 to nearly all of Europe by March 1348. In an age where the fastest travel was by horseback, the plague moved like wildfire. How fast? Faster than fleeing nobles. Faster than royal messengers. Faster than prayer. Florence lost 90% of its population. Cairo, 50%. Some English villages simply vanished from history, not abandoned, but emptied of every living soul. But here's what haunts me most. The plague didn't discriminate. It killed peasants and kings alike. The rich fled to their country estates, only to find death waiting there too. Pope Clement VI had to consecrate the Rhine River itself, because there wasn't enough blessed ground for all the corpses. The human cost. The numbers are staggering. 100 to 150 million dead, from a global population of just 350 million. But numbers can't capture the human reality. Families disintegrated overnight. Parents abandoned sick children. Spouses fled from dying partners. The social fabric of medieval society didn't just fray, it snapped. Giovanni Boccaccio, writing from plague-ravaged Florence, describes scenes that sound like something from a horror movie. Many died daily or nightly in the public streets. Of many others who died at home, the departure was hardly observed by their neighbors until the stench of their putrefying bodies carried the tidings. Groups called flagellants roamed the countryside, whipping themselves bloody, believing the plague was God's punishment for humanity's sins. Others turned to scapegoating. Jewish communities faced horrific pogroms as they were blamed for poisoning wells. The medieval medical mystery. Medieval doctors were completely helpless. They had no concept of germs or bacteria. Their treatments: bloodletting, which only weakened patients further; lancing the buboes, which spread infection; potions made from charred eggshells and treacle. The famous plague doctor costume, that haunting figure with the long beads mask, didn't even exist during the Black Death. That iconic image comes from later outbreaks in the 16th century, when doctors filled their beak masks with herbs, believing foul air spread the disease. They were close to understanding something. They noticed that contact with victims' clothing could spread infection. But they never suspected the tiny fleas hiding in those garments were the real killers. The birth of the modern world. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The Black Death didn't just end the medieval world, it created the Renaissance. With a third of Europe's population gone, the survivors found themselves in a dramatically different world. Labor became precious. Peasants who had been bound to the land for generations suddenly found themselves in demand. They could negotiate wages, demand better conditions, even move to different towns. In Western Europe, serfdom crumbled almost overnight. Why? Because lords needed workers more than workers needed lords. This wasn't just an economic shift, it was a psychological revolution. People began to question authority, to value individual life differently. The art of the Renaissance, with its focus on human dignity and individual worth. It was born from plague survivors who had watched entire communities disappear. The pandemic also accelerated urbanization and technological innovation. With fewer hands to work the fields, Europeans invested in labor-saving devices. The printing press, mechanical clocks, improved agricultural tools, all accelerated by plague-driven necessity. The lasting shadow. The Black Death didn't end in the 14th century. It returned in waves. London in 1665, Marseille in 1720, Hong Kong in the 1890s. Each outbreak taught us more about this ancient enemy. Today, Yersinia pestis still exists. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, Madagascar, and Peru report cases annually. But modern medicine has transformed this ancient terror into a treatable condition if caught early. Yet the threat remains. In 2017, Madagascar faced a pneumonic plague outbreak that killed over 200 people. Drug-resistant strains worrying scientists. The same bacterium that emptied medieval Europe is still out there, waiting. The ultimate lesson. So what's the real lesson of the Black Death? It's not just about death and destruction. It's about resilience, adaptation, and unintended consequences. A pandemic that seemed like the end of the world actually birthed the modern age. The greatest catastrophe in European history created the conditions for the Renaissance, the Reformation, and ultimately the scientific revolution that gave us the tools to fight such diseases today. The survivors of the Black Death didn't just rebuild their world, they imagined a better one. In the ashes of medieval Europe, they planted the seeds of modernity. The Black Death changed everything. How we understand disease, how we organize society, how we value human life. It remains history's greatest reminder that from humanity's darkest moments can emerge our brightest transformations. The plague that killed a third of Europe didn't just change Europe, it changed what it means to be human.